Tonight, the Senate has acquitted the former president by a vote of 57 to 43. 7 Republicans joining every Democrat in voting guilty, but falling short of the 2/3 majority required to convict.
We all remember this, right? Donald Trump was impeached on charges of inciting an insurrection for the events of January 6th, 2021, and the Senate voted to acquit him. But did you catch the interesting part? Let me play it again.
7 Republicans joining every Democrat.
As Trump left office, 7 Republican senators voted that he was guilty of inciting an insurrection. Trump came back from this stronger than ever. So, who were those 7 Republican senators that went against Trump? Why did they do it, and what happened to them? We'll start with Richard Burr, senator from North Carolina. Burr was nearing the end of his 3rd term in the U.S. Senate when he cast his guilty vote on Trump. In a statement that followed, Burr explained that he didn't believe impeaching and convicting a former president was constitutional. However, the guilty vote wasn't about that. Burr voted guilty because, quote, the president directed his supporters to go to the Capitol to disrupt the lawful proceedings required by the Constitution. This was enough to warrant a guilty verdict. Burr was censured by the North Carolina Republican Party, but that didn't really matter because he had already announced 4 years earlier that he would not seek a 4th term. His term ended in 2022, and he retired from elected office. Burr later endorsed Trump in 2024, saying that his actions on one day weren't enough to disqualify him from being president. Next is Pat Toomey. First elected in 2010, Toomey represented the all-important swing state of Pennsylvania. Toomey issued a statement after voting guilty, explaining that Trump was the first president in U.S. history to not observe a peaceful transfer of power after losing the 2020 election. Toomey had also already announced that he would not seek re-election to the Senate in 2022. The race to fill Toomey's Senate seat became one of the wildest in recent memory. TV doctor and Trump-backed Mehmet Oz lost to progressive lieutenant governor and recent stroke victim John Fetterman. Despite his progressive past, Fetterman has become one of the most moderate Democrats in the U.S. Senate. The last who was nearing the end of their term was Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. Murkowski has had one of the most bizarre political careers in the land up north, but what you need to know is she is among the most moderate members of the U.S. Senate. She has consistently offered her vote to Democrats in exchange for favorable legislation for Alaska. Murkowski's guilty vote wasn't surprising, as she had clashed with President Trump before. In a statement, she said that Trump, quote, urged his supporters to come to Washington, D.C. on January 6th to stop the steal of an election that had not been stolen. In 2022, Murkowski narrowly defeated a Trump-backed challenger, former Alaska executive Kelly Tshibaka. Murkowski benefited from Alaska's ranked choice voting system, as she was the second option for most Democrats. She remains in the Senate, criticizing Trump on issues from war to executive power. Ben Sasse's political career has taken many unexpected turns. First elected from Nebraska in 2014, Sasse had won his 2nd term in the Senate just weeks prior. Sasse voting guilty surprised many because he was not from the moderate wing of the party and was viewed as fairly conservative. In maybe the most interesting statement of all the senators, Sasse explained that he had voted guilty for 3 reasons. First, Trump had lied about election results and tried to intimidate election officials. Second, he had criticized the left for ignoring political violence in Portland, so he couldn't be hypocritical and ignore political violence from his own side. Third, he felt Congress needed to stop letting themselves lose power to the executive branch. This detailed statement led to the Nebraska GOP condemning Sasse, which he dismissed. Sasse could have served in the Senate until 2026, but he resigned from the Senate in early 2023 to become president of the University of Florida, a position he resigned from just a year and a half later. Sasse's old Senate seat has been filled by former Governor Pete Ricketts, a close Trump ally. Probably the most famous person on this list is Mitt Romney. The former governor of Massachusetts had been the Republican nominee for president in 2012 and was 2 years into his term as senator from Utah. Romney had always been relatively moderate and famously never voted for Trump for president in any election. Actually, the two seemingly hate each other. Romney was the only Republican who had voted guilty in Trump's first impeachment, so it was no surprise when Romney voted guilty again. Utah Republicans tacitly supported Romney by citing the diversity of opinions within their party as a strength, as Utah's other senator, Mike Lee, voted to acquit. Romney announced he would not run for re-election in 2024, even stating that many Republicans no longer supported the Constitution. In the 2024 Utah Senate race, the Trump-backed Trent Staggs lost the primary to a more moderate Republican, John Curtis. Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana had recently won a landslide election to his second term in the U.S. Senate. He is the most conservative senator to vote guilty according to Senate voting records. Cassidy posted a video to Twitter and explained in later media appearances that he went into the trial as an impartial juror and believed that the Democratic team seeking the guilty conviction did a much better job than Trump's lawyers at making their arguments. This led to Cassidy being censured by the Louisiana Republican Party. Trump and Cassidy have feuded several times in the 5 years since. Cassidy is planning on running for re-election next year in 2026, but he has a tough road ahead. There are already two major candidates trying to run as Trump-supporting alternatives to Cassidy. This election will be a test to see if Trump opponents can still find a place within the Republican ranks. Lastly, there is Susan Collins of Maine, the most famously moderate Republican senator who represents a state that hasn't voted for a Republican presidential candidate since 1988. In a speech on the Senate floor, Collins explained that Americans tried to use violence to get Mike Pence to overturn the Electoral College vote because of lies and rhetoric from Donald Trump. This led to her guilty vote. Collins is still in the Senate, remaining moderate or liberal on social issues and Donald Trump. She has said that she will seek a sixth term in 2026, and her seat will almost certainly be one of the main targets for Democrats next year. So while most of the Republican senators who voted to convict Trump no longer hold their seats, Murkowski remains. Cassidy and Collins will seek to extend their terms next year. As we make our way through Trump's second term, only time will tell if there is still room in the Republican Party for a few anti-Trump Republicans. Thanks for watching. Please consider dropping a like and subscribing for an upcoming video on the 2026 Senate races.